Hey everyone, welcome back. So, this is going to be my first episode of Speaking Saturdays, where I try and record answers to a new speaking test each week. So, I hope you find this useful. Alright, let's begin. So, here we have a few part 1 questions. Let's see. Do you write many letters? No, I can't remember the last time I wrote a letter. That must have been so many years ago in high school. I mean, sure, when I've applied to jobs, I have written cover letters, but it was in an email format. I didn't send handwritten letters, I sent typed out emails. I mean, yeah, sure, technically you call it a cover letter, but when I think of the word letter, I think of something like super old-fashioned, like, oh, you take a leaf out of your book and you handwrite your address and everything in that way, which I think is kind of cute. I mean, I think letter writing is an art that should definitely be honed, especially when you're writing letters to your family and your friends, for Christmas, for New Year's, for birthdays. I enjoy that as like an art form almost. But if you were to ask me, do I do it regularly? Absolutely not. Do you prefer to write letters by hand or to use a computer? Well, like I said, I don't write letters anymore. All of my work is done through my computer, so whatever I have to do, whether I have to email someone about their courses or if I have to help someone out with an issue they're having, I do everything through my PC. I mean, I have written a few things out by hand a few times, I would say, in the past year, especially when I've had to go to banks to, reactivate my accounts, or, when I've had to fill out customer service, like, feedback forms. But those were like, I wouldn't call them letters. They were like really, really tiny, like just, one paragraph in my signature, hardly a letter. What do you usually write about? Well, like I said, it's normally just, information about courses, helping people with their homework, assigning homework, making inquiries about stuff. It's really fairly standard stuff. I don't think I've written anything particularly long form. But now that I think about it, actually, I do have a blog. Of course, I haven't written on that blog, I think, in a few months, which is, yeah, it's quite shameful. I should definitely be updating that blog. Yeah, so when I blog, of course, I do write quite a bit. I try and write a good, meaty article. But that's really the extent of what I write. I do write poetry, if that counts. Who do you usually write to? Well, it's just normally, students, whether prospective or current or past students. And of course, I mean, I chat with my friends and, my family. I mean, I'm pretty much always online in a way. I've actually been that kind of a person ever since, I was a teenager. I was 12 when we, received internet access, and ever since then, I've always been like super interested in talking to people from all over the world, and I text my friends all day and night, and I was like a super chatty person back then. It's strange now I'm like, not that kind of person anymore, but yeah, I still, I'm always like talking about something with like my mom or with my friends, or of course, I mean the kind of work I have, it's basically 24/7, so I'm always in touch with some or the other student. Okay, let's go on to part 2. Describe an occasion when you could not use your mobile phone. You should say when it was, where it was, why you could not use your mobile phone, and explain how you felt about it. It's very rare for me to not have access to my phone, but a few years ago when I was coming back home after having gone out to this department store to exchange an item, it suddenly started raining really heavily. And that wasn't strange because, obviously it was July and it normally does rain pretty heavily in my city. So, I wasn't unprepared or anything. And, seeing as to how the rains were becoming pretty heavy, I decided to put my phone in this plastic pouch that I had, and I put that plastic pouch inside my bag, and I put that bag inside my grocery shopping bag just to keep things safe. And so I was walking back home, and the rains just started to get heavier and heavier. And worse, there were these really strong winds. So, my umbrella was flying wildly, and I had great difficulty walking back. And it was the water level was starting to rise. So I was a bit worried, and I wanted to get home as quickly as possible. Normally, it just takes about 20 minutes to walk back home from that department store, so it's a very short walk. But because my visibility was pretty low, I couldn't see things clearly. I was trying to walk really carefully, and so it was taking me, a bit of time. And then I feel my phone vibrating, and I'm kind of anxious because I was wondering who was calling. I always get anxious, when someone's calling me. I'm always like, oh, I have to pick it up as soon as possible. But obviously, in this case, I couldn't risk getting my phone wet. It wasn't normal rain, like I said, it was a thunderstorm, really. I think that day we had a cloudburst, in fact. So, I just decided to ignore it because what else could I do? And I kept walking, but the calls just kept coming. It was like one call after the other for like 3 to 4 minutes. It was like consistently buzzing. So I was a bit worried and I realized it could possibly be my mom who was calling me. So I figured I should try and find a way to, respond to her. But obviously I had to search for a place where I could, be safe from the rain. I could wipe my hands and then reach my phone. Thankfully, thankfully this store was open and the man inside, he gave me some tissue to wipe my hands with. And so I texted my mom and I told her that, it was raining really heavily. Of course, she knew that. And that's why she was calling me, because she was worried. And so I told her that, I would need some time to come back home because I was walking, but the visibility was really low. But she was really tense and really anxious. But I told her everything was fine. And then I put, my phone back in my little pouch and my bag and in the other bag. And I started walking back home. Within just 5 to 10 minutes, I began receiving calls again. And when I finally did reach home, I think by that point I had like 11 calls and a whole bunch of WhatsApp messages from her because she was panicking. I'm laughing about it right now, but it was a really scary episode, because I'd never been caught in a thunderstorm like that before. Part 3. Is it necessary to have laws regarding the use of cell phones? Generally, I don't like the idea of, clamping down on anyone's freedom. But obviously, there are places where you really should not be allowed to use your phone at all, like in airports, like when the plane's, taking off and landing. And around gas stations, it's more important for everyone to be safe than for one person to have their, freedom. So that kind of thing is fine. And of course, I think very young children should probably not have access to cell phones, just because, cell phones are no longer what they used to be. They're all smartphones now. You'd be hard pressed to find like a feature phone or a so-called dumb phone that just makes, calls and texts. So, yeah, I think that might be good. But again, it's like you want to be careful, because it has to be a very fine balance between ensuring that any kind of law around the usage of cell phones, it has to be in the interest of public health and safety. It can't be used as a way to, restrict people's freedoms. That is something I feel very strongly about. Should young children have their own phones? I'm not sure if that's a good idea. On the one hand, when I was a young child, I definitely enjoyed having a cell phone. I was glued to my phone. But now that I'm an adult myself and I'm of the age where you think that, you could be a parent someday, would I want my children having phones? Probably not. Would I want them to have, a very basic feature phone? Yeah, they should definitely be able to contact their parents and emergency services. They should be able to text their friends, and keep in touch with their school friends and stuff. But giving them smartphones, it's just too risky, because there's no way for anybody to control all kinds of content online. And it's just, yeah, sure. It curbs their freedom. And, like I said, it's just like when I was a child, I enjoyed doing that, right? But it wasn't exactly the best thing. No child should have had that kind of unrestricted access to the internet. There should be controls in place, of course, because young children are very sensitive and they're very impressionable. Seeing or hearing the wrong kind of material, whether it's an extremist point of view, whether it's, illicit material on the internet, whether it's people that they come into contact with, because, you have a lot of predators online and they might seem to be, good people. They might even seem to just be teenagers, but you never know who you're interacting with online. Do you think phones could totally replace computers in the future? I mean, there's no doubt about the fact that phones are getting smarter and smarter by the day. Um, but I mean, it's a big stretch to say they could replace computers. I mean, for one, computers have a lot more power in terms of, the kind of operations they can run. I mean, yeah, phones can do a lot these days. I remember when I had my first cell phone, you could only make phone calls. You could send text messages, you could have multimedia messages, but those were really expensive. And now, I mean, you can do a lot. I mean, you can even run Photoshop on your, phone, which is amazing, but at the same time, these phone applications rarely have all the features that, PC or Mac applications do. And obviously, a phone, I mean, it's supposed to be portable, it's supposed to be handy. You're not going to carry a 13-inch phone around here. And it's just, I can't imagine doing my work, I mean, technically, if I wanted to, I could do all my work through my smartphone. But would I enjoy it? Oh, absolutely not. I need to have a big screen. If I'm going to be reading things, if I'm going to be typing things, it's not just the screen, it's also the whole keyboard layout and everything. I mean, typing on the phone is just, like chatting, text messages and things like that. And while, yes, sure, I mean, phones nowadays are super powerful, but computers are also far more powerful. There will always be this, gap between the two of them. I think they have their unique and special roles. I don't think that one needs to replace the other. Do people in your country prefer to use a mobile phone or a computer? I've seen most people use their phones for a lot of tasks, and with India being a developing country, computers, laptops, desktops, they're not exactly affordable for a lot of people. While the middle class and upper middle class and so on, they can obviously afford to have, computers for every member of the family. Most people are able to at least have, a cell phone. And, just I think 4 or 5 years ago, we recently had this new telecom operator who launched really cheap data plans. And ever since then, the amount of Indians on the internet has definitely increased. A lot of people have had access to the internet since then, which I think is amazing. But they're obviously using their, phones for a lot of these things. And why not? I mean, phones are very powerful these days and they can do a lot of things that computers couldn't do 15 years ago, All right, that's about it. Well, I hope you found that useful, and I welcome any and all comments that you may have. I'm hoping that this program will be useful to you, and I'm also interested in hearing if there are any questions you'd like me to answer. I would love to do that. All right, well then, I'll see you next time.